Hello all, Game Methuselah here. I want to do a video on Minimalist Game Master. This is something that I tend to be very reluctant to talk about with my players. I don't like to damage the verisimilitude. I think I owe Matt Coville $2 now for using his big word. But that really is big and true in lots of role-playing games. You know, it's the appearance of authenticity or reality or truth. And that's, I think, in many ways what role-playing is all about. Over the years, I've noted there were multiple styles of Dungeon Master. I think we even talked about a couple of them. But two big things that I've noted, and I thought about it a lot after watching Matt's third world-building live stream on his Saints the other day. And someone asked him a question. They said, of the prep time you do in developing your campaign, how much of it is for you and how much of it is for the players? And Matt made what I thought was the absolute perfect response. 80-20. 80% of the work he does is for himself. 20% of the work is for the players. Sometimes I don't think the players even use 20%, but I understand his position because you want to have that suspension of disbelief for yourself so you can really present a good story. Now, Matt and my friend Don are real major game preppers. They are into the detail. They do elaborate maps. Matt generates new creatures or changes the way they work within his system. Don will paint miniatures and he'll draw magical items to give out to the players so they'll have beautiful pieces of art. This is really nice. It makes for a really great campaign, and those are two of the best game masters I've ever played with. They're fun, they run great games, they're super detailed, and you really feel like you're in an immersive world. Both of them I also noted are authors, so sometimes I'm always wondering if they're secretly writing a book and doing all this so they can have plot lines and background stories for their items. But the other end of the story, well, it's me. I'm the minimalist DM. I tend to put very little together, and sometimes there's a risk in that, and the risk is verisimilitude. When I'll have an NPC or a monster, Matt will often ask me, well, what's his name? And I'll say, I don't know, make up a name. And I think this bothers him because I haven't spent the time and effort to do that. But the problem is, being a minimalist, I don't see that as good reward for my time and effort put in to getting a game out there. I want to produce, I want to paint the figures, I want to paint the dungeon tiles, I want to have a really exciting story ready in a world I like with a campaign that's engaging. And that takes time. And the other time I don't want to go into is changing the way gravity works, or changing or detailing the world to a great extent. If I have a pantheon of gods, I'm very likely to use ones that occurred in humanity. In my Albion game, you can believe in any of the elven deities from whatever game system we're utilizing. If it's Dungeons and Dragons, they have their very own. And you can use the Celtic mythos, or if you want to run a character like an Egyptian from somewhere else, a Norse character or whatever, which would be all possible in my game, you can use their pantheon of different gods, and thusly you have a mixture. And I think that works well. Most game systems have some idea of what gods do, or you can at least determine if they're a life or a death or whatever their status is, so you can use that for your priests. But there are some shortcomings, one of which is you need to have it a lot in your thought out in your mind. When you are a minimalist game master, you have to be expected to be able to turn on a dime. A lot of people are going to change the game on you because they know that's how you run. Matt, I think, spoke about that when they decided they weren't going to run the adventure I had prepared for them, and they went off on a tangent, and I could do that. That's the advantage of minimalist game mastering as well. You have a fast prep time. I mean, there are stories where there was no one showing up to game, and people would say, Jim, do you have a game ready? And of course, I didn't have a game ready, but I had prepared my minimalist way so I could run. you use material that's existing in the world. It used to be harder back in the 70s and 80s because there weren't as many maps, weren't as many nice dungeon pieces and the like, so you had to create things. But you could, and with a little bit of preparation, you could look like a real genius, and you could make your game seem very, very detailed. I dedicated my time to painting. I made my games look beautiful. I had a lot of great backstories, but most of them were out of my brain. Since I didn't have to read modules and spend time and time poring over them to find out what it is they were trying to tell in their stories, I would just read the core source books of whatever game I was playing. So if it was Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or any other game system, even Chivalry and Sorcery or Middle-earth role-playing, I would just read the source books. Wouldn't look at the adventures so much, but mostly concentrate on what the world looked like. I'd get that ingrained in my play style. I'd get that ingrained in my mind, and then I could present the visual of it all the time. I've done that with Albion, and I'm going to try to show you as we go on how to do that for yourself. Using a lot of pre-builds will help. A lot of times I found, especially nowadays, with dungeon tiles by Dwarven Forge, other companies, Wizards of the Coast has put out their own little, cutout tile pieces for dungeons. Pazio has got a really great set of large maps that you can utilize that they have for their adventures, but can be easily utilized for all your own adventures. Use what's there. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. I have a big tactile system of dry erase board, white, board with the squares on it that you can draw your dungeons in, and we often use it, especially if I'm doing a dungeon crawl, because it's a large expanse, and I don't necessarily have enough dungeon tiles to represent that. But at the end of this video, I will list and show you some pictures of some of the stuff I use so you can get an idea. The thing to remember most in minimalist game mastering, to look like a genius, is prep up a lot of stuff beforehand. Keep every old game map you have. In fact, if you play in somebody else's game and they have a dungeon map or an overland map or something they've written up, ask them, hey, can I have that? And often they'll give it to you, and you store it and you keep it, and at some point you have amassed this library of material. I generate little player characters all the time in new game system to see how they look. Well, once they're generated, I'm not necessarily going to play them, so I have them on a little 3x5 card. So now I have an NPC. I'll look at the monsters and I'll write some down on all just their basic stats down on a card and figure out their point totals and the like, so I can be prepared to do a certain CR encounter if I'm playing Dungeons & Dragons. Or if I'm playing another game system, I put together a bandit group or some force mix that I can utilize, I suppose, going into my 3x5 card and putting it up there. I have a character I generated, so if I suddenly have a evil wizard, I can just pull him out and he's ready to go. At first level. At third level or fourth level, you can always just add the appropriate additions and you are ready to play a character right now. So you don't have to have a long prep. And so you can put together a campaign. And from the campaign, it's all broken down into little adventures. And the little adventures, if you're not familiar, mostly are 2 to 4 encounters. If you play any of the living games that were being brought out by Wizards of the Coast, you'd find that's pretty much a standard formulation. And you can do that. You basically want to sell the color, sell the background of your game, sell the concept of what you're doing. I ran my Albion second adventure last night with my group in Orange County, and it went really well. I mean, I'd already run it twice, so it was really good in my mind. I had my dungeon tiles, I had my maps, I had a new map I had picked up down at the con in San Diego, which I'll later show you a picture of. It's really good. And I was able to lay out the maps. And then from that, I had smaller maps with little towers and castles and the things as they forced their way through the elven forest to finally find the ruins of this elven citadel. And that's where the bad guys were. So they went into the underground, and at that point, they suddenly left the map and went onto my Dwarven Forge dungeon tiles. And 2 of the people watching the game, and one of them actually spoke up, said, "Oh my God, this looks fantastic." Now, not only do I have dungeon tiles, though I didn't use many of them last night, I have tons and tons of little greebly statues and fountains and little chests of treasure, dead bodies, sacrificial items, altars, giant statues to demons and gods and various type things. This all adds to the visual color. So as you're presenting the story, and you're not having to give a very elaborate story, and you're surely not reading out of a book, because this is very minimalist. You're going to basically understand the color, and as you see things that I present to you in the future, showing you how I make an adventure, you're going to realize that most of what I do is just setting up the color so people can understand it. And then from that point on, it's up to you. It's an elven ruin. It's long since fallen into decay, destroyed by orcs 100 years ago. So it still is burnt and charred, but now it looks like other things have moved in. I don't have to go into much more description than that. I can. If I go into a room and people are kind of talking amongst themselves, I can describe how the ceiling is made of some clear quartz that allows the sun to come in and provide illumination. This is all just made up straight out of my mind, but it's always there because I'm trying to envision what this looks like. And that's what you want to do. You want to be doing your part to do the cooperative storytelling. They're giving you the concept of what their characters are doing. You're giving them the moral dilemma and challenge to fulfill the mission that you have given them. Prepare yourself. Prepare yourself in advance with all kinds of little things, little tricks, nice maps, nice miniatures, little greeblies, things that look impressive that you can quickly put onto the battlefield, and that will excite your players. And then you use that. Is that statue really there? Does it look like that? Well, not completely, but it does. I have a Demogorgon map. A Demogorgon statue, excuse me, and when I put that on the board, even though it's a 1980s pitiful Demogorgon statue, it looks beautiful because it's all painted as if it was jade, and the base is covered with gold and silver and magical items that are all spewed across it that people have come to gift to the god Demogorgon in hope that he will favor them. This is what you want. You want this story just unwinding, but you want it unwinding in your mind, and you want to keep it as simple as you possibly can. Now, Matt is able to do this in his very detailed campaign because Matt lives and breathes his story. Don does the same. And this is what I'd like you to do, because we've talked about it. If you're doing modules, make them your own. If you end up running my Albion game, make it your own. Take what I give you, take what anybody gives you, and make it your story. Think of how you'd want to feel in it, how you'd want to portray it, the dramas and all those things involved. But keep it simple. Use the player aids that are there. So very often, I never get a dry eraser or an eraser out to draw anything. I put down a little map, I drop some secondary maps on top of it, then I go to my dungeon tiles, maybe underground, and all of it's there. And it's beautiful, and it looks really interesting, and the players get engaged. We had a 5-week, almost a 6-week layover from the last time I played my Albion playtest down in Orange County. After last night's game, everybody is chomping to play again. And they want to know if we can get out here next Thursday and play again, because the game is very engaging. And that's up to you. That's up to you to tell the story, make the game frightening, make the game challenging. I mean, they almost decided to attack the gelatinous cube that had already gobbled up the dead bodies of the monsters they'd killed and was just sort of lounging down a little hall. And they thought, well, maybe we should. And they start to approach. They throw a glowing gold piece down there to see what happened. And I noticed I told them it was floating in air. They walked down and I said, well, make a wisdom save. And they fortunately did, and realized that it was floating in some gelatinous clear solution. They kind of realized what it might be and fled, which was most likely a good plan because they already had a nice victory under their belt. They had fulfilled the mission, and it was time for them to get home with the glory and treasure. I like being a minimalist game master, and I think as we go, I'm going to talk more and more about it. I'm going to try to talk more to Don and show you some of his great miniatures he does because he's an excellent painter and a really good speed painter. But he has a theory of gaming. Matt has a theory of gaming, which I know you've heard a lot about. And it's really good. And I think the idea is to provide you with as many different opportunities to see how to make your own campaign and then make it your own. Even if you're using modules, you can change them, tweak them, the way you align them one module after another. add a bad guy, add something else to your game, and you'll end up with a really engaging campaign that keeps people interested and makes them want to know the story. And that's what you want. You want them to ask you about your story. Well, this is going to happen, and you say it so matter-of-factly as if it doesn't make any difference. And they go, well, yeah, okay, who cares? But then they say, but wait, are they really going to burn those children if we don't recover this item? And it's like, sure, they don't care. They'll appease the public by doing that. It's up to you. You don't have to. No ramifications if you don't. But then it's their moral dilemma. Do they do it? Do they not? Are they heroes? Are they villains? Just maybe mercenaries looking to make a few bucks. That's up to the players. But as you lay the story out, and these moral dilemmas and challenges and battles and enemies start to accumulate, they start to develop a great desire to continue with you telling your story. And that's what I always look forward to. I hope this was of some help. I'm going to go out and give more information on this on my Twitter feed. So if you get a chance, check me out on Twitter. If you like what I'm talking about, please share my videos, or at least give me a like. That helps a lot in getting people to watch me. In the meantime, guys, have a great weekend. So fight me, devils, fight, for I hate peace. Game on.